What is up, YouTube? I'm Devon DaVinci, leader of the Renaissance Crew, and you are watching DaVinci Reacts. Today I have a reaction for you guys. This is OverSimplified, Prohibition. I know that a lot of people have been asking me to react to this. I am familiar of when these episodes drop. I am subscribed to OverSimplified. I know exactly when they come out. Usually I try to give them a couple days before I react. I've had some videos that I wanted to try to take care of beforehand, so I didn't react to this as soon as I wanted to, but I did react to it after the fact, which is what I ideally like to do. Now, Prohibition, it's an interesting thing to make a video about this, because so far all of his videos have been about conflicts, not events. And it kind of opens my eyes to the possibility that he could do oversimplified videos about a lot of different events that have happened throughout history. So by doing this, it sets a precedent that allows him to like broaden his or the person who makes the videos. It allows them to broaden their subject base, so they have all these extra things they can cover now. I was expecting maybe like a Vietnam War video, or a war of some kind that happened in the world that might have been obscure, that not a lot of people know about. But Prohibition is interesting because Prohibition is a concept that was pretty much doomed to fail from the beginning. It's the same reason why the war on drugs is a failure, and why, honestly, like the whole situation with abortion and everything is going to be a failure too, because you can't stop that stuff from happening. If somebody wants alcohol, they're going to get alcohol. If somebody wants drugs, they're going to get drugs. If somebody wants to have an abortion, they're going to have an abortion. By turning these things into just flat out illegal acts, all you're doing is just pushing it into the underground. So now you're going to have shady organizations cashing in on this new market that you've created, and it's just going to help fund criminal activity. Whereas if you have the government provide this, or allow it to be legal and allow legal businesses to provide this service, it keeps those criminal elements out. Like, that's no longer a thing people are going to use, because if you have a choice between getting alcohol from a corner store down the street compared to some shady guy with ties to organized crime, you're probably going to choose to go down the street. Like, it's not that hard. So it's, like I said, it's the same with drugs. Like, if somebody wants to buy marijuana, they would rather do it from a dispensary or something, from like an illegal seller, as opposed to going to the street corner with the guy that has all these other things and guns and everything else. And it's like, I would rather buy it from a legal source if you gave me the ability. You just don't give me the ability to. But I'm still going to buy it. Like, that's pretty much what it comes down to. Now, Prohibition, let's go ahead and check this out, because I don't know the full-on elements of it. I just know like some of the general beats, like the Chicago Mafia with Al Capone, the New York Mafia with Lucky Luciano, and like I know about it from like a Italian Mafia standpoint. I don't know about the full-on things, like when it started and when it ended and things like that. I just know they were like started and ended through amendments. But let's go and check this out.
This video was
by the way,
OverSimplified's
channel will
Click the
be
link below to save money on your online shopping.
If you want to check
and
it
also,
out.
limited edition Al Capone pins on sale
as well
now.
as the original
Get 'em quick
description box
before they sell
for
out.
the original
Link
video,
in the description
if you
down
want to
below.
react to it yourself.
Good morning, honey. What's for breakfast? The usual. 2 caskets of rum, a mug of hard cider, and a full bottle of wine. Oh boy.
Damn.
Oh, I'm running late. I'll have to take it with me. Don't forget your lunch. It's a 6-pack of beer, a flask of whiskey, 6 shots of tequila, and as a special treat, a banana. Aw, gee whiz. I'm gonna be smashed today. Enjoy your day of operating sharp, dangerous farm equipment. I can't believe this is an acceptable way to live. God bless America. Okay, gotta go.
And he's dead.
I love my life.
And he's dead.
America, the land of beautiful strip malls, top-class infrastructure, and wonderful urban sprawl. Ah, yes, beautiful America. But what's the most American thing you can think of? The Statue of Liberty? Mount Rushmore? A crazy lady in a mobility scooter yelling at a pigeon? Well, what if I told you the answer?
Is he from Florida?
That's right. When the Puritans arrived on America's shores, they brought a ship packed with beer. George Washington provided his men with a daily cup of whiskey. Andrew Jackson's inauguration party left the White House so trashed that everybody had to be ordered outside. Frederick Douglass said whiskey made him feel like a president. Me too, Frederick. Me too. Americans drank at breakfast. Doctors prescribed their patients hard liquor. In the 19th century, Americans drank 3 times as much as their modern-day counterparts. That's a lot of whiskey. Hey, Jerry, how's that report coming along? Already done, sir. I've also organized your paperwork, watered your flowers, and been a father figure to your children. Wait a minute. What's that smell? Have you been drinking at work? No, sir, I would never. Well, why not? Everyone else is doing it, but I got all my work done. You're fired!
Oh my god.
Americans drink at work. They drink at barn raisings, baptisms, and public hangings. Heavy drinking was so normal that it was as American as apple pie. Hi, everyone. My name's Ron, and I'm an alcoholic. Get over yourself, Ron. We're all alcoholics. But more and more Americans began to wonder whether all of this truly was a normal way to live. Were Americans drinking, perhaps, a little too much? Well, one group in particular thought the answer to that was yes. You know them, you love them. Woman. Oh, crap! Woman! Run! Hang on! We just want to talk. Woman talking in public? That's outrageous. Come on, Fred. You've got 2 kids and a wife at home. Yet here you are spending your entire paycheck on booze. And you, Dr. Spanky, you were on the cusp of discovering time travel. But what did you discover instead? The sweet, sweet joys of whiskey. That's right. Alcohol. It's destroying our families, our jobs, and our homes. She's right. She's right. Hang on, men. Don't let them get to you. This saloon is our safe space where our wives and children can't annoy us with reality, where we're free to be real men. She's right. She's right. I am a man. And what is it real men do? Take care of their families. I don't know what she's talking about. Do you take care of your family? No.
I don't know what she's talking about. Do you take care of your family?
We shoot guns and we mud wrestle. As America's heavy drinking ruined more and more lives, moral resistance began to arise, and women were at the forefront, taking matters into their own hands at a time when women doing just about anything was shocking. They'd had enough of being victim to their husband's heavy drinking, and they were going to do something unprecedented. You're going to what? I'm going to protest. Oh, sweetie, women can't protest. Whoa. Starting in Ohio, before spreading nationwide, women began a crusade against alcohol. They marched through towns and cities, singing hymns, gathering outside saloons, and praying on their knees. Women praying was so terrifying that in some towns, schools were shut and business stagnated. On one occasion, firemen were called out to hose down the dangerous praying women. On another, the owner of a beer garden reportedly held a cannon outside and threatened to reduce the savage women to dust. Nevertheless, they persisted. They formed the WCTU in 1874, and they organized. They set up homes for inebriate women. They installed water fountains in public parks. They wrote textbooks for school children that contain some interesting claims about drinking alcohol. Here's little Timmy. Uh-oh. Looks like Timmy's gonna have his first drink. He's taking a small sip of whiskey, and Timmy has spontaneously combusted. The end. The woman's efforts weren't in vain. In small towns across America, drugstores agreed to stop fulfilling prescriptions for alcohol. Men committed themselves to giving up drink. Inspired by the woman's moral fervor, some saloon owners closed their doors. The Women's Crusade and other temperance movements were forcing people to reconsider alcohol's role in society, and more people began to side with the growing temperance movement. Many states had even begun enacting their own dry laws that restricted the sale and use of alcohol. One of them was Kansas, where alcohol had been outlawed since 1881. Despite this, many illegal saloons remained open, and authorities had done just about nothing to stop them. One woman, disgusted by what she saw, decided she would take the law into her own hands. And not just any woman, a terrifying, hatchet-wielding, sweet old lady named Carrie Nation. Armed with her trusty hatchet and a bag of what she called smashers, she traveled from town to town visiting saloons. But she wasn't there to get smashed. She was there to smash. The men could do nothing but cower as sweet little Carrie hulked out and tore the place to shreds. She went to Kiowa and smashy smashed. Wichita, smashy smash. Topeka, smashy smash. On a couple of occasions, she was arrested, but each time they were like, okay, Carrie, we're gonna let you go so long as you promise to be a good girl and not smash up any more saloons, okay? Screw you, pig! Yeah, I think she's gonna be all
Her
right.
spit is
Smash,
green.
smash, smash. Carrie's tactics shocked the other members of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, but she assured them, and this is a quote, "Ladies, you do not know how much joy you will have until you smash, smash, smash." Carrie became a household name, and she hoped her unusual tactics would spread across the country. But unfortunately, many of the women's movements eventually slowed down. Why? Well, because of this kind of thing. Thelma, I ripped my pants again. Ugh, well, you'll have to sew them yourself because I'm going out protesting. What? I don't know how to sew. What if I burn the house down and get eaten by alligators? What? Don't be stupid, Mitch. Look, I've gotta go. Call me stupid? She's the one who's stupid. Hey, Thelma! Look who's stupid now! See, while the women were out protesting, there was nobody to do the cooking and cleaning and being seen and not heard, and they gradually had to
Bon
return to their
appetit.
duties at home. But where the women had got the ball rolling, a new movement was about to take that ball all the way to Washington, D.C. I'm talking about the Anti-Saloon League. The Anti-Saloon League was a political pressure group run by a very sweet-looking old man. But don't let that deceive you. This
He's
guy
a ruthless
was evil
dictator.
genius. While the women's movements were interested in a whole range of issues, Wayne Wheeler and the Anti-Saloon League only cared about enemy number one, Mr. Alcohol. And as a result, they were extremely effective. They were able to exploit the fears of the American people. And I mean everyone's fears. Here's how they did it. Hello, sir. Welcome to the Liberal Progressive Rally. Why don't you introduce yourself? Well, I'm Patty, and I'm an immigrant from Ireland. And tell me, Patty, do you drink? Oh yes, I drink a lot. See, folks, people like Patty come here looking for a better life, only to end up drunk in the gutter. Don't worry, sir. We're gonna help you. Hey man, you're doing great. I just need you for one more thing. Hey, Christian conservatives. This is Patty. He's a dirty Catholic Irish immigrant who's come to destroy America with his alcohol-fueled debauchery!
Oh my god.
Workers were told alcohol was a capitalist ploy to keep them subjugated. Factory owners were told alcohol was making their irresponsible workers lazy. The black community was warned alcohol was hindering its progress, while racists were warned alcohol would turn black men into brutes. In one of the most confusing eras of American politics, totally opposing groups found themselves agreeing on at least one thing: alcohol was bad. The Anti-Saloon League also made great use of propaganda, something prohibitionists have been doing for decades. Take this specimen, for example, that warns what will happen to you if you start drinking. Let's see. First you take a drink, you get a little rowdy, okay. You make some new friends, nice. Then you become homeless. You turn to crime, and... But the most effective tactic Wheeler used
Why is
to
he
force
holding a gun
prohibition
like
on
this?
America was
Like the
pressure
handle,
politics.
right?
In any election he could, Wheeler very successfully rounded up support against any politician who was in favor of alcohol. In Ohio alone, he had 70 state representatives and the popular Republican governor ousted from office and replaced with prohibitionists. Suddenly, every politician in America was afraid of Wayne Wheeler. Even those who enjoyed alcohol in private began pretending to be against it in public. Alcohol is delicious. Malicious. Sorry, Wayne. I'm really drunk right now. Then it really hit the fan in 1917 when America found itself fighting in the First World War against Germany. Anti-German sentiment exploded. Sauerkraut became Liberty cabbage. German measles became Liberty measles. And Dachshunds became the embodiment of evil. See, America? You've always been this way. The
Yeah,
biggest
we kinda
brewers
do
in
stupid
America
shit like
were
that.
German, and Wheeler saw to it that drinking alcohol became akin to pro-German treason. The German brewers desperately tried to fight back, creating their own propaganda, presenting beer as a healthy beverage, one that you could even give to your kids. As you can imagine, it didn't go down well. President Wilson instituted some temporary wartime prohibition
Of
measures
course,
to save
Woodrow
grain for
Wilson.
food. And with many in the country now in support of prohibition, all that was left was to make it law. One problem was that taxes on alcohol made up nearly 40% of the US government's annual revenue. And the government wasn't just about to give that up. No problem. The Anti-Saloon League helped lobby for the creation of a new income tax on the American people. And just like that, the government was no longer reliant on alcohol. Prohibition was finally introduced to Congress in 1913, not just as a law, but a constitutional amendment. In 1917, as the House held their final vote on the Prohibition Amendment, Wheeler was watching from the gallery. You spineless cowards. I know half of you drink, yet here you are bowing down to Ned Flanders up there. Look at him like he's some kind of Caesar. Ugh, don't be so dramatic. I obviously don't think I'm Caesar. Now release the lion. In the end, Prohibition passed the House easily, 282 votes to 128, and the states ratified the new amendment by 1919. America, a nation obsessed with liberty and freedom, had just voluntarily given up its private right to choose whether or not to drink alcohol. We did it, folks. We fixed everything. America will be perfect forever. But you just dissolved America's 5th largest industry and lost tens of thousands of jobs for us immigrants. No, you idiot. You don't get it. We helped you, idiot. Ugh, I could really go for a beer. Oh, no. Immediately after Prohibition went into effect, alcohol consumption in America decreased as Americans followed the law and tried not drinking. Man, if we're gonna be law-abiding good boys, we need something else to fill the dark, lonely void that delicious beer once did. Well, how about we crack open a nice cold can of water? Hell yeah. Toss it over. Nah, this isn't doing it for me. Let's try knitting. This isn't filling the dark.
The fire and alligators.
Want to fly some kites? Ah, screw it. Let's go get some illegal beer. While it seemed like many Americans supported Prohibition, after the law went into effect, it seemed like just as many Americans intended to keep on drinking, and they would go on to find a variety of ways to break the new law. Here's a question for you. Do you like breaking the law? Well, shame on you. Or do you like saving money when you shop online? Then you should use Honey. Do you ever shop in store? Of course not.
I like
Then you
how
have
those
to
are the
talk to
only two
real-life
choices you
people.
can have.
Yuck. You'd rather shop online in the comfort and darkness of your mom's basement. And better yet, you can save money when you shop online with Honey. Honey is a free browser extension that scours the internet for promo codes and automatically tests them when you're checking out. Look at me. I'm buying a Baby Yoda smartwatch to increase my chances of getting a girlfriend. And look, this magic dancing coin man has a promo code for me. Holy heckin' balls! I just saved $18.75. Watch out, ladies. And
I
guess what?
myself have
Those of
Honey,
you who've already
and
installed Honey using my link.
a lot of times when you use it, it doesn't necessarily work, but I did save some money on
stinky idiots. It's free.
a self-help haircut
installed
system. It's like 3
So
mirrors
get Honey for free
connected.
today by going to joinhoney.com.
It allows you to like get all angles when you're cutting your hair.
That's joinhoney.com.
It actually saved money on that for me.
And as always, you'll be supporting my channel. So thank you. Now where were we? Oh yeah. Punching Patty, passing Prohibition, and procuring pints. Pretty soon after the new law went into effect, the failures of Prohibition were already beginning to rear their ugly heads. For starters, the details of the new Prohibition law, written by none other than Wayne Wheeler himself, turned out to be more draconian than expected. Many Prohibition supporters only wanted to outlaw hard liquor and hoped beer would remain legal, but the Volstead Act outlawed anything over 0.5%. That would make Liberty Cabbage illegal. Secondly, the new law was full of loopholes that Americans very quickly began to exploit. For example, while the sale and manufacture of liquor was illegal, drinking it wasn't. And you could also keep any alcohol you had before the law went into effect. So many private clubs hoarded huge amounts of alcohol that saw them through the entire Prohibition period. Whiskey intended for medicinal purposes was also allowed, and doctors basically became bartenders. It looked as though a full-on epidemic
Sounds
had
familiar
broken out,
with
as there was a sudden surge in
the whole opioid
prescriptions
thing.
for whiskey. Sacramental wines used by churches and synagogues were also permitted. Orders for communion wine suspiciously skyrocketed by millions of gallons. And as rabbis had access to religious
One
wine,
for you, one
suddenly
for me.
everyone was becoming a rabbi. You had Rabbi Pat O'Leary, Rabbi LL Cool J, Rabbi Fluffy. But don't worry, I'm sure all these definitely legitimate religious figures
That's probably
couldn't
where Whoopi
possibly be
Goldberg
selling
came
wine in a
from.
back alley after mass. Yep, definitely nothing strange going on here. New products also hit the shelves in stores, such as Vine Glow, a brick of dehydrated grape juice, itself not alcoholic, and therefore perfectly legal. But the packaging did contain a strangely specific warning. After dissolving the brick in a gallon of water, do not place the liquid in a jug in the cupboard for 20 days, because then it would turn into wine. I'll take 1,000. Yes, sir. Now, at this point, I want you to think back for me, if you will, to the year 2005. You're the coolest kid around, and you convince your parents to rent the greatest movie of all time from your local Blockbuster. But the movie starts with a strange message, something about not downloading a car. You immediately disregard that and hop on Kazaa to download the greatest song of all time, and in the process, drain your dad's bank account with copious amounts of ransomware. You were breaking the law, you bad boy or girl, but did anyone come to arrest you? No. That's my point. If no one's enforcing a law, While everyone's breaking it, is it really a law? And so it was with Prohibition. See, the conservative-led governments of the decade were also the kind of people who believed in small government spending. So they'd passed a law that would be extremely difficult to enforce, but also didn't want to spend any of the money required to enforce it.
Pay me
The
first.
newly created Bureau of Prohibition only had 1,500 agents to cover the entire country. That's one agent for every 70,666 Americans. In a massive country with 12,000 miles of coastline and one gigantic land border with Canada. Good luck, schmuckos. And all these clever little loopholes people were using to score illegal booze were only just the beginning. America was about to devolve into alcohol-fueled criminal chaos. By outlawing it, Prohibition had made alcohol a precious commodity, and millions of Americans would become outlaws as they found a variety of ways to score illegal booze. For example, many Americans began making their own liquor. Illegal stills from making moonshine were found by Prohibition agents from the hills of Kentucky and the caves of Arizona to parking lots in major cities, and even in the homes of Prohibition-supporting politicians. Oh, come on now, fellas. I voted for Prohibition. I'm not gonna have an illegal still. What's this? That's my son, Freddie. Say hi, Freddie. Sir, this is obviously an illegal still. How dare you? Hey, what's this in the bathtub? That's bathwater. Why does it taste like alcohol? Here's a better question. Why are you tasting my bathwater? Weirdo. Come on, Freddie. Let's get away from these perverts. To discourage moonshining, the government began adding extra toxins to many of the products moonshiners were using, which resulted in many cases of severe illness and death. But alcohol wasn't just being made at home. Along America's vast coastlines, rum runners smuggled alcohol into the country by sea. A floating supermarket known as Rum Row extended along the East Coast just beyond America's maritime limit, and bootleggers frequently sailed out in small boats to pick up shipments of booze.
But just stop and think for a second. Congress people or politicians implemented these laws because they wanted to quote-unquote protect Americans. So their idea of enforcing that is to put poisons in the alcohol that made Americans sick and killed them. That's it.
America's maritime limit, and bootleggers frequently sailed out in small boats to pick up shipments of booze. These bootleggers could then be found selling their illegal products everywhere, even in the halls of Congress. Wow, Pop. One day, I want to work here. Well, son, if you work hard and never give up, one day even you could be a massive hypocrite. Even President Harding was known to serve his cabinet bootlegged whiskey, and some bootleggers were so successful, they became bazillionaires, such as Roy Olmsted, an ex-cop who became one of the biggest employers in the Seattle area from smuggling booze. Unfortunately, all of his whiskey came from Canada. Yuck! All of this criminality was being made possible by copious amounts of corruption across the country.
I don't know what the alcoholic amount in drinks are in Canada, but I've been told a lot of times that America is kind of like the laughingstock of beer. Like, we tend to like water down our beer a lot. So to sit there and laugh at Canada's beer is kind of funny. Like, I want to know, if someone from Canada, what is the alcoholic content of your drinks? Because America is very low.
All of this criminality was being made possible by copious amounts of corruption. Across the country, armies of government officials were persuaded to turn a blind eye. Bootleggers became so rich, it was no problem to stuff a couple $1,000s into the front pocket of the police chief, or the mayor, or their disapproving mother. And some cops were getting almost as rich as the bootleggers. All right, men, everyone gather in. I've received word that one of you has been taking bribes from bootleggers. Any ideas who? Kevin, perhaps. Got any thoughts? No, sir. Many police officers came from the same communities that drank a lot, and they weren't about to arrest their own granddads for knocking back some homemade gin. But all this isn't to say there was no enforcement. Plenty of government officials were doing their best to enforce the new laws, and some unlucky individuals received very harsh penalties, such as a Michigan mother who was sentenced to life in prison for small-scale moonshining. Cases like these were widely reported in the media and only served to make Prohibition even more unpopular. But not just that, the media also loved to cover the exploits of the most famous bootleggers, turning them into national icons. One of the biggest bootleggers was a man named George Remus. Originally a lawyer, he watched as his bootlegger clients paid off enormous fines like it was nothing, and proclaimed bootlegging's the business for me. But unlike most bootleggers, Remus had big brain, and he came up with a pretty clever system. See, there were millions of gallons of liquor produced before Prohibition that were sitting in distillery warehouses, and it could only be sold with government permission to drug companies. So Remus set up his own drug company and bottled the liquor. Then he set up his own transport company to transport the liquor. And then he would send his own men out with guns to intercept his own transport vehicles. And this would happen. Hey man, this is a stick-up. Oh no, please don't hurt me. I won't hesitate to shoot. Please, I have a wife and kids. Hand over all the whiskey, Fatty. Hey! Fatty isn't in the script, you jerk! After stealing all the whiskey from himself, he could then sell it for big bucks. The perfect crime. Unfortunately, Remus was eventually caught by a goody two-shoes prohibition director in Indiana who wouldn't take Remus's bribes, and the government found Remus guilty of violating the Volstead Act 3,000 times. For 2 years, as Remus sat in prison, his wife promised to take care of all of his money. And by take care of his money, she meant have an affair with a prohibition agent, sell off everything Remus owned, and file for divorce. When Remus finally got out and found his big fancy mansion empty with his wife gone, he reportedly broke down in tears. A few months later, during their divorce trial, he spotted his wife in a car in Cincinnati. Remus hopped in a cab and asked the driver to run her off the road. The driver was like, okay. Then Remus got out of the cab and shot his wife dead. He immediately handed himself into the police, and his next trial, this time for murder, became a national sensation. Remus defended himself, claiming insanity, occasionally carrying out skillful questioning, occasionally crying in the corner. But the nation felt bad for him. His wife had screwed him over, and so when after just 19 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned and declared him not guilty, the court erupted.
I don't think that's how that works.
And just to remind you, this guy bluntly admitted to murdering his wife. The American justice system. Mwah. As alcohol poured into the nation, a lot of it was going to a new type of drinking establishment that had been booming in popularity. A secret drinking establishment. So secret that from the outside they often looked like ordinary shops or homes. So secret that you usually needed a password to get in. So secret that everybody knew about them. Speakeasies. And once you were in, the party went all night long. Scantily clad flappers, snake ladies, jazz. It was a roaring time to be alive.
Reminds me of Harlem Nights.
Some publications even posted reviews of these illegal clubs, and bribes galore kept the party going. It seemed like half the police officers and federal agents in cities like New York were receiving kickbacks from speakeasy owners. Hey, what the Kevin Costner is going on here? Officer O'Hannity, taking bribes? Why am I not surprised? Prohibition Director Simmons? For shame. Mom? What would Dad say? Ask him yourself. Dad would say, quit being such a wet blanket and let Daddy earn his tips. Anytime a speakeasy was shut down by authorities, it seemed like 3 more would just pop up elsewhere. And some neighborhoods were so full of them that one resident began hanging a sign to try to keep partygoers from constantly knocking on her door. It really seemed like the new laws regarding alcohol, in some places, were simply being ignored. And one prohibition agent who traveled the country liked to see which city was the most defiant by timing how long it took for him to be offered a beer after he arrived.
Of course,
his
New
winner,
York.
New Orleans, where a cab driver offered him a drink after just 35 seconds. Bravo!
That's
Many voices in Congress were already speaking out against prohibition and its failures. To display how ridiculous the whole thing was, one Republican congressman gathered the media to all come and watch him drink a homemade beer. When he asked a passing police officer if he'd like to arrest him, the officer said no. Hey Wayne, is all this what you had in mind? I thought we were gonna make the country better, but it almost seems like it's worse. What do you mean? Alcohol consumption is down. Well, that may be true in your small town world, but it says here drinking in some areas is up, as are arrests for public intoxication, drunk driving, and incidents of liver cirrhosis. The general chaos has turned America into a nation of criminals with no respect for the law, and all these attempts at enforcement are just costing the economy valuable money and eating up judicial time and resources. Release the line.
Yep. Oh my goodness.
The social change and corruption that Wheeler and the Anti-Saloon League had been so eager to prevent, in the cities at least, was surging. See, when something's legal, you can usually regulate and control it. But make that thing illegal, and often anything, becomes fair game. Legal drinking age, gone. Mandatory closing hours for clubs and bars, gone. Other unspoken sociocultural rules surrounding alcohol, gone, gone, gone. In speakeasies, different genders and ethnicities were beginning to mingle in a way they hadn't done before. The Roaring Twenties saw a monumental shift in culture, not least of all because now men and women could flirt in public without being damned for eternity. An outraged Wayne Wheeler did his best to make sure that anyone breaking the law was punished.
That's a nice
He had
line.
even
I'll use
stricter
that on
legislation put
Jackie
in place
and
in
Val
New
one
York.
day.
But all this did was clog up the justice system with petty drinking violations, and judges began letting everyone off with light fines, so the judges could get back to dealing with things that actually mattered. You know, things like murder. And there was plenty of murder. Because bootleggers and moonshiners were one thing, but Prohibition had given another kind of criminal an opportunity to make a fortune. Mobsters and gangsters. Hey, Fat Tony, big news. Hey, Fat Joey, what's up? I just got word from Fat Louie here that the government's outlawing alcohol. You know what that means. That means we're gonna be rich. Quick, call Fat Polly and let's go hijack a liquor truck now. All right. Hang on, let me tell my wife first. Hey, Fat Susan! No pizza for Fat Joey tonight, capiche? Stop calling me Fat Susan! Forget about it! Come on! Rival gangs began to battle in America's cities, raiding each other's transports, assassinating rivals, and trying to take control of their city's illicit booze trade. Every city had its top dog. Detroit had the Purple Gang. New England had Charles King Solomon. But no city was as infamous for gang violence and murder as Chicago. The city had multiple gang factions, and at first, they agreed to stay in their own neighborhoods. But the thing about criminals is that they're criminals, and the agreements inevitably broke down. One day, the leader of the Italian Southside gang was walking along the street when this happened. And he was like, you know, I think I'm done with this, and left for New York, leaving his crime empire to his chief enforcer, none other than Al Capone. Having been knifed in the face in his younger years, Capone earned himself the name Scarface. Although interestingly, he hated that nickname and preferred to be called Snorky. Snorky was ruthless, just like any other gang leader in America.
Scarface,
but what set him apart from others, the reason he's become synonymous with 1920s gang warfare, is this. Most other gang leaders would try to keep a low profile because, you know, they're killing and murdering and stuff. But Capone lived for the fame and kept an extremely high public profile, frequently speaking with the media about his exploits and presenting himself as a gracious host, providing Chicago with good times. No need to thank me, fellas. I just provide the city with a valuable commodity while doing away with the competition. You mean you murder people? Whoa, who said anything about murder? I just, you know, force my rivals underground. When you do the thing with the hands, it seems like you're talking about murder. Whoa, look at you with the brains. No, I just help people retire.
Permanently.
From life, so murder. Whoa! Al Snorky Capone was somewhat of an enigma, brutal in how he dealt with enemies, but in front of the camera, he was all smiles. One day, he'd be ordering hit after hit. The next, he'd be signing autographs in Wrigley Field. One day, he'd be bludgeoning members of his own gang with a baseball bat for conspiring against him. The next, he'd be playing Santa at a nearby parochial school. And no murder could ever be traced back to him. Just like every other criminal, he stuffed the pockets of city officials with cold, hard cash. And any who did try to oppose him sometimes found themselves being thrown down the steps of City Hall in broad daylight. Problem solved. The public couldn't get enough of Capone. He quickly became a household name as people romanticized the gang life he lived. And this became a source of concern for the people at the very top. President Hoover? What is it now, Miles? I'm busy. Well, it's just that there's a lot of crime, sir. Crime? How long's that been happening? Well, since the dawn of man, sir. What? Would you like me to blame it on the Democrats again? No, Miles, I want you to blame it on squirrels. Yes, the Democrats. Now stop wasting my time. Since having a crime lord controlling public officials and winning the hearts of the people probably wasn't a good thing, Hoover personally ordered that something be done about this Capone fellow. But before he knew it, President Hoover was also dealing with another major problem. You know him. You love him. Woman. The Prohibition era had been going on for nearly a decade, and anyone with a brain could see that it really wasn't going very well. One person with a brain was Pauline Sabin, an extremely influential and rich woman who served on the Republican National Committee, fundraised for Republican presidents, and had a secret wine room in her giant mansion. She initially supported Prohibition, but was now disgusted at the chaos it had created, and she began a new women's movement, this time not for Prohibition, but against it. Being the extremely influential woman she was, her new organization gained nearly 1.5 million members within 2 years, 5 times that of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. She hated that the WCTU claimed to speak for all women, and she began calling for the repeal of the 18th Amendment. President Hoover, I helped fund your campaign, and now I want you to end Prohibition. Miles, what is it I say when I'm not going to do anything? You'll look into it, sir. Oh yeah, that's right. Pauline, I'll look into it.
Yeah. Mark Hamill has said the same thing about George Lucas. That's his go-to line for not doing a damn thing. But well, his is we'll talk about it later. But yeah, when it comes to things like this, it always comes down to moderation. This prohibition probably could have been successful if they focused on the harder stuff, and they allowed people to moderate certain things. I'm not saying it would have been necessarily good, but it would have been more successful. I think that it'll probably still be something going on today if they had moderated it right. Another comparison I can guarantee people will probably make in the comment section will be a comparison with this and guns in America, gun control, discussions like that. But if it were handled the way that this is handled, where they're trying to ban all guns, it would have the same effect. People would just start going underground and try to get guns and things like that. It wouldn't be a good thing. But again, if you moderate it and try to keep certain types of guns from getting in regular people's hands, it would be more successful.
Sabin gave speeches on the steps of Congress and helped start a growing push among the American people against prohibition. But Hoover, a prohibitionist himself, wasn't budging. Then, on the 14th of February 1929, something happened that shocked the nation. Men, thought to be working for Al Capone, tricked some Irish mobsters into meeting them at a garage in Chicago, thinking they were there to purchase hijacked whiskey.
This is the Valentine's
Instead,
Day
the
massacre.
mobsters were lined up against the wall by men dressed as police, and they were shot. The Valentine's Day massacre had people outraged. It was cruel and almost felt like American mobsters had finally crossed a line. People were sick of the violence, and in part, they blamed Prohibition for helping to create it. The pressure on Hoover to do something was steadily increasing.
America fought harder for beer than they did for
I want
civil
you to put a
rights.
report together to see if this whole thing is working. You mean the thing where mobsters are becoming increasingly powerful and massacring each other in the streets, and everyone is disregarding the law, and half our public officials are corrupt and taking bribes?
And women's rights, for that
thing?
matter.
Yeah, I want to know if it's working or not, Miles. Stop wasting my time.
Well,
Hoover
civil rights,
continued
women's
to
rights,
drag
same
his
thing.
feet on Prohibition, but after the Valentine's Day massacre, he was still determined to do one thing. He wanted Al Capone in prison. Since Capone had been so careful, the FBI were having a hard time charging him with anything, but eventually, they got him. Capone, we know you're supplying Chicago with alcohol and you've been involved in countless murders. Whoa, look at you with the crazy talk. I ain't done none of that stuff. But you're rich, right? You're damn right I am. And so where'd all the money come from, Capone? All right, I'll let you in on a little secret, but you gotta promise not to tell anyone, okay? I don't pay my taxes. Whoa! For all of his murdering, the IRS finally got Capone on tax evasion. At his trial, he
Yeah.
didn't seem too concerned though, and spent most of his time having a laugh with his lawyers. Hey Capone, I gotta know.
See, the one thing you don't mess with in America, and maybe Al Capone is the reason for this, his case might be the very thing that caused this, but the one thing that everybody is afraid of, whether it's the hardest of gangsters or the toughest of politicians or the most charismatic of businessmen, whatever, the one thing everybody fears is the IRS. You do not fuck with the tax man. Period. If one thing that America worries about, it is taxes. Like, it's like, you know how in, like, for those of you that play video games, nowadays games are getting more microtransactions and things that you can buy like online using real money. Now, the game might have problems that have been glaring from day one. Like, why haven't they fixed this? Why haven't they patched this? Why haven't they done anything about this? Those problems will continue to persist throughout the entire life of the game. But the one thing that will be fixed, no matter what, is anything that involves those microtransactions. If there is an error that allows people to, like, let's say, get something free off of a microtransaction without having to pay for it, or if there's an exploit or something like that, that shit will be patched within a week. Like, they will take care of that within a second. That is what taxes is to America. Like, you can play around with other stuff, but when it comes to, like, your taxes, you better make sure all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, because if anything comes back off and the government feels like you owe them money and you're not rich, they're coming after your ass. Period. If they feel like if they feel like they don't have enough faith that you're going to make good on the money you owe them, they're coming after you. And like I said, maybe Capone is the reason why that fear is there, because it's like no matter how tough somebody is, they fear the tax person.
Concerned though, and spent most of his time having a laugh with his lawyers. Hey Capone, I gotta know, why are you so confident you're gonna win here? Well, Your Honor, because I'm an honest man with a big heart who's passionate about working for the good of the people. And also because I threatened the entire jury's families. Luckily, at the last minute, the judge replaced the entire jury pool with a new one that Capone's men hadn't yet got to, and Capone was found guilty. He was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, the harshest penalty ever given to a tax evader. But even with Capone locked away, the violence in Chicago and other cities continued. And in response, the
But what
movement against
eventually got him was
prohibition
the fact they
continued
didn't like
grow.
to
And the final nail
wrap
in
his
Prohibition's
tool, if you know
coffin
what I mean.
came in 1929. After a decade of booming economic growth under 3 Republican presidents, the stock market plummeted, and America was thrown into the grips of the Great Depression. It was an awful time. 1 out of every 5 workers, 15 million people, would lose their jobs. Half the nation's banks failed. Temporary
We can beat that
shantytowns
now,
were
that's
built for the
nothing.
broken homeless in public parks. Suddenly, very few people had time to care about prohibition. Expensive enforcement of an unenforceable law didn't seem like that big of a priority when people were having their homes repossessed and losing their life savings. And many began to argue that repealing prohibition would create vital jobs and tax revenue for the government. Yet President Hoover doubled down. Here's that report you asked for, sir. Gimme. Prohibition is great. Fantastic news. Sir, it says here prohibition is great at undermining the rule of law in America. Miles, it says the word great. That means good. Now stop wasting my time! The public, increasingly shocked at the violence they saw in the streets, the corruption they saw in the government, the general disregard for the law, and now an economic calamity, had enough. For his re-election, Hoover faced a Democratic candidate who promised to finally do something about prohibition. Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Of course.
Crowds cheered as FDR made his campaign speeches promising to modify the Volstead Act, and Pauline Sabin, a lifelong Republican, along with her 1.5 million supporters, endorsed Roosevelt. And on Election Day, it was a landslide. Before FDR had even taken office, Republicans in Congress began the process of passing the 21st Amendment to repeal prohibition. One of FDR's first acts as president was to pass the Beer Permit Act.
I don't know if it's a coincidence or whatever that the 21st Amendment is the amendment that brought back alcohol, and in America you have to be 21 in order to drink alcohol or not, but that it's still funny. Like, it's a funny idea that like the 21st Amendment was the one that brought back drinking, and that's the drinking age, which it shouldn't be that high. I think the drinking age should be 18 personally, but
which made beer legal while the new amendment was being ratified. In 1933, with the passage of the 21st Amendment, prohibition was finally over, and the people celebrated like they'd just won a world war. Bars and taverns were packed. The WCTU were inconsolable. Wayne Wheeler was dead, and the celebration, particularly in America's cities, was intense. Heading into the mid-1930s, the effects of prohibition were clear to see. From now on, culture around drinking had changed, with men and women drinking together, not in saloons, but in bars and taverns. The crime syndicates that had been given so much power through prohibition remained powerful as they moved on to other things. Some states opted to remain dry, with Oklahoma only repealing its prohibition laws in 1959. To this day, there are still counties in America with some form of prohibition.
really,
So what did we learn today, kids? What's the big lesson?
I didn't know that.
What's the moral of this story that we can all take away and apply to our day-to-day lives? Maybe that you shouldn't force your own morals on others who don't share them? Maybe
True.
that if you tell Americans not to do something, that's the one thing they'll definitely do.
True.
Or maybe there is no lesson. Maybe we're all just a bunch of dumb, stinky idiots, and we're all doomed. The end.
True as well. But something's gonna come. What's coming? Oh, that's the end of it, I guess. Yeah, like I said, moderation with everything is how life works. Balance. You never want too much of one thing. You never want too little of one thing. Like, you always want to have it controlled. And when it comes to alcohol, there's nothing wrong with drinking. There's nothing wrong with, getting drunk every once in a while, but you want to control it. And when I say getting drunk, I mean, like, within the legal limit. Don't sit here and, like, pass out drunk, because that it leaves you vulnerable. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like drinking, because the idea that because whenever I'm one of those, I'm a sleepy drunk. If I get drunk, I get sleepy. The last thing I want is to be sleeping in some random ass place and not knowing what the hell's going on around me. I don't like the idea of that. So if I ever do drink, it's going to be at home by myself, or at least around some people that I trust. And I don't know, it just amazes me that people put themselves in that position. But I'm not judging. You're free to do whatever you want to do. Have fun. Go out, do whatever the hell you want to do to enjoy yourself or enjoy what you're doing. There's nothing wrong with it, but just remember moderation. If you are going to do that, don't do it frequently because that's when you start to have a problem. When it starts to like impact your life, then you want to reevaluate some stuff. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. I look forward to seeing you in future videos. And until then, I'm Devon DaVinci, and I am signing out. Deuces.